All right, we're just going to get started now. Welcome everyone to today's webinar. It's called How to Set Up a Complete Ad Tech Stack. Thanks for joining today. I just want to confirm that everyone can hear me. So if you can you just let me know in the questions box? Okay, great. Thank you so much. I just want to introduce myself. I'm Jana Fung. I'm the product marketer at AdStage. And today we have on the call Nicholas from the Jebbit marketing team and Michael McEuen from the marketing team at AdStage. AdStage is an all-in-one advertising platform, and it supports full campaign creation and reporting for both your search and social ad campaigns. So we support Google AdWords, Bing ads, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn ads as well. AdStage is the only self-service solution that supports all 5 of these networks. And today we're partnering with Jebbit on the webinar, How to Set Up Your Complete Ad Tech Stack. Jebbit is a post-click marketing platform. It's used by brands like Volkswagen, Reebok, and Dell, and it transforms web pages and content into interactive experiences that drive deeper education, engagement, and conversions. So just before we get started, I wanted to let everybody know that we are recording this session. So if you do have to drop off for any reason, we'll be sending out a recording later this week. And we are saving some time at the end for some questions. So if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to type them into the questions box and we'll get to them at the end. In the meantime, follow us on Twitter. Our handles are @AdStage and @Jebbit. And now I'd like to introduce our speakers, Mike and Nicholas. They will be giving today's presentation. Michael is the Director of Demand Generation here at AdStage. He has over 7 years of experience with PPC advertising. And prior to AdStage, he led a Google AdWords premier agency, and he's also generated pipeline as an in-house B2B marketer. So he can be found on Twitter @LonoHead. And we also have Nicholas, who is a B2B and growth hacking expert. He's led digital marketing at some of the fastest growing startups in the most recent years. He's on Twitter as well. His handle is @NicholasLemx. So without further ado, let's get started, Mike.
Wonderful. Thanks for the intro, Jana, and I'm really excited to have Nicholas with us in the Jebbit team. This topic specifically, ad tech stack, is something that we get questions for quite a bit. And I love that while AdStage is really mostly focused on that, lead generation, that first initial click, that we have Jebbit here as well to talk through kind of the after-click experience. But before getting ahead of myself, I just wanted to kind of recap where the marketing landscape has kind of evolved. So you look back in 2012, as marketers, we only had maybe 350 martech tools at our disposal. Fast forwarding to 2015 today, we have about 1,800. And a lot of the times, just the amount of sheer variations and different options that we have can be cumbersome and confusing. So to navigate this landscape, what we are hoping to give to you today is more of a simplified version of what a complete ad tech stack should look like and the elements that make up that ad tech stack. So over today's agenda, we're hoping to cover pre-click and post-click tech, and we'll go over the definitions for both in a second. And then also, as you're looking to advertise, consolidating everything and aggregating it into one system, your best practices. So when you're actually looking at budget and where you're getting the best bang for your buck, best practices for the allocation. Of course, even with tools, marketers need to know how to best prioritize their time because we're often with lean departments to get things done. And finally, with solutions for that measurement. So after everything is said and done, did it actually have an impact on your business? And at the very end, we'll be hosting a live Q&A. So in the meantime, if you have any questions, as Jana spoke about, please enter them into that side panel there. And me and Nicholas are happy to speak to it a little bit further. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Nicholas. Nicholas, take it away.
Thanks so much, Mike. And to your point, the marketing Lumiscape that you showed before can be a little overwhelming at times because you're not actually going to utilize technologies from each of the categories, nor do you really need to. So like Mike mentioned, we've broken it down into 2 clear sections that are essential for your ad tech stack. And that would be pre-click and post-click. And understanding the distinctions between pre-click and post-click technologies is the first step to evaluating what technologies are best fit to accomplish your specific marketing goals. So we'll start here with pre-click. Pre-click technologies can be defined as any marketing technology that is meant to attract and engage users through your marketing channels. This typically includes search and display networks like Google AdWords, paid and owned social platforms like LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter, independent publishers that you may be doing media buys through, and retargeting platforms like AdRoll or Retargeter. With all of these technologies, you're typically playing on a cost per click, cost per impression, or cost per lead basis, and trying to gain traction through 6 specific channels. Those channels could be social, like a sports team posting BuzzFeed-style quizzes for fans to identify which player they're most like; display, like a B2B company running retargeting ads to drive demo requests; email, so an e-commerce company like Reebok offering discount codes through a promotion, as well as native search and event channels. So when evaluating pre-click technologies, or which ones are right for you, start with the channels where you think you can best target your audience and the perfect buyer. And continue to run campaigns and test different messaging to see what drives the most engagement and ultimately conversions.
Excellent, Nicholas. I know this is essentially half the picture. So most of the initial time is spent getting people to your website or your landing page. I'd love to hear your thoughts around after the fact, that other half. What is the experience all about?
Yeah, so the experience, or the other half of your ad tech stack, is going to be post-click technology, simply defined as what your prospective customers experience after they click through your ad, whether it's a social post, email, etc. The goals here are simple in theory. 1, convert as high of a percent of click-throughs as you possibly can to conversions, and collect as much data as you can to optimize your remarketing and your retargeting efforts. But not all the conversion goals are the same. It varies from marketer to marketer. So when you're evaluating post-click technologies, it's super important to understand which specific goals a certain technology can complement. And there's 6 main ones that we've identified and outlined here for you. 1, brand awareness, so driving education around your company or product. Social engagement, so getting users to engage and actually share your content. Lead generation, attracting and nurturing B2B prospects. Consumer profiling, collecting important identity and interest data from your prospects to personalize future and that current experience. E-commerce sales, simply driving direct sales through your digital storefront. And user acquisition, attracting new signups and users to your app, whether it's a B2B tool or a mobile application. So understanding which of these goals is best aligned with your own objectives will help you understand not just which tools to use, but how to use them. And the main technologies you're going to be using in the post-click space are landing page tools like Unbounce, or maybe a landing page tool within your marketing automation system like Eloqua, Marketo, or HubSpot. A/B testing platforms like Optimizely and Visual Web Optimizer. Personalization technologies like Demandware, and again, a lot of personalization technology in post-click can be offered through marketing automation platforms. And then there's post-click marketing technologies that aggregate most of these efforts, like Jebbit. And here we can see how all of the pre-click and post-click technology works together to help marketers achieve these specific goals. Again, this is just the broad spectrum of channels and goals. When you're designing your ad tech stack and evaluating which specific technologies that you actually want to test and try to implement, choose 2 or 3 channels and 2 or 3 goals, and find a few tools that complement those. And the most important thing that you can consider when you're evaluating these tools is what tools can accomplish the most with the least amount of time invested. And that leads to the second most thing that you need to be considering when evaluating these tools, which is attribution. So improving data attributes by 10% can increase your return by 16%. This means throughout the pre-click and post-click sphere, you should be tracking specifically where you attract the best and, again, your perfect buyers, events that lead to engagement and conversion so you can learn from them and replicate them, how to leverage this data to improve retargeting, and most important, how all of these factors lead to the success of your digital marketing campaigns. One way to identify which strategies are leading to success is to seek out technologies that aggregate your existing data and your existing platforms. So I'll let Mike actually expand a little bit on that.
Thank you for Nicholas. Thank you for that perfect segue. So you talked about data attribution, and you start to understand what maybe networks, ad networks are going to work best for you. One of the biggest pieces is to actually aggregate that together. Anyone who's kind of managed these in the disparate systems understands the frustrations of the time it takes to actually allocate and spend going into each individual native network, both reporting out of it and optimizing your budget for the best kind of conversion yield or the best return on an ad spend. So to have a solution in there that's going to aggregate all the solutions, all those different networks. So whether that be something like an AdStage, there's also many other players in the space. There's also ones that aggregate it from more of a dashboard API style. But to have all your data points in one centralized place where you can make those actionable decisions of where to best invest your ad budget and also where to save time. So let's talk about a little about tagging philosophy. And what we mean by that is to actually track things through. So we were talking about the pre-click of where you're building your ads, you're looking at your targeting, you're doing your bids and your ad copy. When you start thinking about the after the post-click experience, you want to track both sides of those halves. And the way that you do that is to come up with a solid URL philosophy within your business. So that's where you have a couple of solutions, either on the manual side or the auto tagging side that I'll show in a second. But essentially, you want to make sure that all your URLs across all your ads are tagged in a specific way that at the end of the day it will reveal to you which network, which either like search phrase or the person or the interest they have actually yielded increased revenue to your business. So I'll show you from a manual side how you can do that in the next slide. So from a manual URL builder, this is something that Google offers, and many others. You can actually build it in a spreadsheet yourself. This is where you can adopt a philosophy that's going to match how your website analytics are going to attribute it, how your CRM, such as Salesforce, and how your marketing automation, such as like a HubSpot and Eloqua, or a Marketo will attribute everything. So you can use these URL builders from a manual perspective to really start to understand how to track things all the way through and build methodology of that. You'll soon find out that that manual nature is going to be very cumbersome. And that's why you want to start exploring more automated solutions. So with that, there are some availabilities where you have some solutions out there out of the box that will auto tag that. What it means is it's taking that philosophy that you have and make sure that it's appending it to be read very well with something like analytics, your CRM, or your marketing automation system. So for example, Google AdWords has an automated tagging switch that you can flip, and then it will read everything in Google Analytics perfectly. AdStage, we have one that does it across every single network, and we make it very analytics friendly, A, and then B, we reveal one conversion column for all, so we track everything in aggregate. There's also great tools out there such as Visible that actually tags everything and it reads perfectly through your CRM. So when you have like a closed won deal, it will actually reveal which search phrase or which campaign drove that closed won deal or influenced it. Finally, so you have your tracking in place, you're starting to better understand what's working or what is not working. So the pillars that you want to look at is first, you want to take a scientific approach to your testing. So if you're testing two variables such as ad copy, place them against each other, place them for a set period of time, such as 15 days, and go back and understand what is working or what is not. You want to optimize, so for your internal KPIs. This is more, and Nicholas is going to reveal some of these equations more towards the end of the presentation, but it's always not enough just to optimize for something like the amount of leads. It's better to optimize for actual business impact, such as like opportunities created or actual realized revenue. And the very last one is be ruthless in your pragmatic testing. So when you find something that doesn't work, trim the fat, pause that, and allocate your budget where you're going to see the best kind of maximum return for your ad spend. So Nicholas will go through some of these equations, but you want to always bring that philosophy of these 3 bullet points to your advertising.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Mike. So what would you say is the tipping point or a good indication that a technology or a specific marketing channel isn't performing well and you should consider removing it from your stack?
It's an excellent question. I think when you start to track everything through at the very early stages, when you're just setting everything up, you're not going to have firm visibility into the true impact to your business until after one full sale cycle. So whether that be something like e-commerce, you'll know in a couple of days, perhaps like 14 days. If you're doing like a SaaS technology for B2B, it may take a full 45 to 90 days, depending on your entire kind of first sales cycle. But after that, you should have enough actionable data to better understand how things are performing. So one example of that is in the past, I've only optimized towards those surface level metrics in the networks, such as cost per lead. And for example, I might get a $15 cost per lead from Twitter, and for LinkedIn, it might be $110. So if I'm looking at surface level, I might put all my money towards Twitter, but what I'll quickly find out is LinkedIn was the one that was actually helping me close deals, and the deal sizes were larger. So once you have the attribution in place, then you get a full picture, more than just the surface level metrics of where to best invest your ad dollars. So
yeah, that's a great point.
We talked about kind of philosophies on testing and some attribution, but one of the bigger pieces, as I mentioned, is the limitation of time. So Nicholas, I know you had some great philosophy here, and I'd love to know about this ratio.
Yeah, no problem. So prioritizing your time when it comes to these technologies is something you really need to consider, especially if you're a startup or a small to medium business marketer and your bandwidth is limited, like I've been in a lot of my past roles. So as a rule of thumb, I've had success in the past using 2 post-click technologies for every pre-click one that I use. Though, of course, this is subjective and completely dependent on your specific needs and complementary skill sets. So if you have a web design or strong writing skills, you need to, again, look back and evaluate to see which tools and technologies you actually need. But the reason that you should be using fewer pre-click technologies in general is because they're more mature, in the sense, to Mike's point, that there are many tools out there that aggregate distribution of your campaigns through the many different channels. And post-click technologies, on the other hand, usually require stringing a few together to find that right success. So when it comes to success and measurement, CMOs in the digital era have been mainly concerned with impressions, website visitors, and bounce rate, etc. But many of them are starting to shift their focus to more metrics tied to revenue. A lot of the CMOs that we've been talking to here at Jebbit as well, that's becoming a much more strategic focus, because that's what actually impacts and drives business at the end of the day. So to be sure that you're having success in the post-click and pre-click space, you should ask yourself if you're truly measuring things that will help your company not just drive clicks and impressions, but actually new business. Some of the metrics that you should be monitoring in addition to click-through rate, impressions, and conversions are cost per lead if you're B2B, or cost per purchase if you're a B2C company. The ability to attribute this back to individual and aggregate channel performance by continually testing and modifying your campaigns, gross revenue and profit that you actually drove from these campaigns, as well as how much they're filling up the opportunity pipeline of your business. And the most important one that often gets overlooked is the time spent setting up these campaigns, from strategizing to creating landing pages to actually implementing, launching, and analyzing them at the end of the day. This is important because it has a direct correlation to the revenue and profit that you're driving from your digital marketing. And the truth is that the time you spend doing all of these tedious tasks, jumping back and forth between channel and from platform to platform, factors heavily into the ROI that you're driving from your campaigns. To give you an example, a few years ago, I used to spend 3 to 4 hours setting up campaigns through each channel I was using: Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm sure a lot of you have experienced that, again, especially if you're a startup or small or medium business marketer. And I would spend another 3 to 4 hours crunching numbers at the end of the week to analyze my aggregate campaign performance when I had to report back to my boss what the cost per lead was, or how much revenue we drove from a specific campaign. After a year ago and implementing a tool like AdStage, I could launch a multi-channel campaign in under an hour and spend virtually no time analyzing them. So the 7 hours that I was able to save every week factored greatly into deciding to add that to my ad tech stack. So that's why it's important to take that into consideration, the time factor as well, when you're adding and evaluating new technologies, because it does make a large impact in the long run.
I think
And that's
often when
also, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Nicholas. Yeah, I was saying oftentimes when people are calculating ROI, they leave that variable part out, labor costs, but it's very, very important. And I love that you're bringing it up to surface light in that equation. You know, as you were speaking to how it could be very labor intensive to have multiple networks running on the after the post click experience as well. In the past, you know, where I've had to use a designer. Marketing technology has freed me up considerably. Since the past, I used to have to put in a ticket. Oftentimes, it would take a designer off a more important project, such as working on our actual product, and it would actually delay engineering times for me to take a designer's time. Nowadays, either by using a post-click experience such as like Jebbit, or by using like a landing page builder out of my marketing automation system, I can do what used to take a ticketed system and take many hours of iterations. I can go into an editor format and without any HTML skills, bust out a landing page or a post-click experience within a couple of hours. So that time savings has had an actual impact on the efficiency of our business as well.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and exactly why it's important to utilize both pre-click technologies like AdStage that essentially aggregate the effort you spend completing tedious tasks, setting up multi-channel campaigns, and then having to go back and measure and analyze them, and as well as post-click marketing technologies like Jebbit that we really try to provide the heavy lifting to make sure you're maximizing the return on those campaigns after the click. And that's truly the essence of a complete and efficient ads tech stack.
Excellent. So let's look at it in kind of a recap form. So we talked about a little bit earlier that pre-click stage. So that's when you're looking at your overall which networks to run, consolidating all of them so you have one kind of interface to manage your entire kind of ad budget. You're also looking at your tagging philosophy as well. So as it carries through the post-click and the measurement experience, you have complete tracking all the way through. And then to the post-click experience, that's when you're really looking at your overall landing pages and your personalized content that you're serving up to increase the efficiency, not only the relevance to that person. So someone might be searching for your service or product, or they might be serendipitously kind of discovering it, making sure that they have the best catered kind of experience, which selfishly turns into higher conversion rates. So often, with management, they may want you to drive more leads in the pipeline or more business, but you don't always get a huge increase in your budget. One of the easiest kind of ways to increase pipeline is the post-click experience. So if you were before only converting at 1%, and you introduce like a personalized content experience and now can convert at 3 to 5%, you have now dramatically increased your overall pipeline without increasing your budget, which is exceptional. And then finally, that last pillar there, measurement, is where you want to start tracking it all the way through. So from the actual pre-click to the landing page or the personalized content experience into your CRM and marketing automation system, and make sure those are all tied together based on your tagging philosophy. So at the end of the day, you can come out with an ROI calculation and say, okay, this exact network and this exact landing page was the best combination for me that actually turned into realized revenue.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Mike and Nicholas. That was an amazing webinar. I actually personally found this pretty interesting because I've worked in ad tech for so long now, but I haven't actually ran campaigns before. So it's fascinating to see what tools are available and essential for the common marketer. So like we mentioned at the beginning, we plan to save some time at the end of this webinar so we can address any specific questions that you guys are having or would want feedback on. So we'll open up the questions now. So just give me a second while I pull up the questions that we have here. Cool. So we have a question here, and I think this one's more for Nicholas. But the question is, how are post-click marketing platforms different than A/B testing or landing page platforms?
So that's a great question, and it's one we actually hear a lot here. So Personally, I consider A/B testing, landing page, and multivariate testing platforms a part of the post-click solution, but they tend to lack the technology that can create, interactive content or take your existing web pages and content and make it interactive, profile engage consumers, and also push that data back through your ad tech stack. So post-click marketing technologies, in contrast, provide the majority of the functionality, but also complement other technologies I mentioned. So a lot of marketing automation tools like Marketo and HubSpot provide some of these post-click features, but there are also platforms out there like Jebbit that specialize in solely that post-click experience.
Great. And Mike, have you used some of these types of platforms in the past, like both post-click versus like A/B testing platforms for your landing pages?
I have. So I think as far as like A/B testing, it's great to kind of reveal things, but at the end of the day, I find that personalized content definitely provides the best experience for the user. So A/B testing is where I might do something like different headlines or even like button colors and those kind of like smaller elements. When you start looking at true post-click experience, that's where, if based on if they're a type of person. So for example, you were talking about, Nicholas, the different types of users coming to your site. So if it's a content marketer, catering my messages to that content marketer versus someone who's in lead gen is a better overall experience. And we've seen those have a more dramatic increase to conversion rates for those people who have heard in the industry, have really tested those, opposed to things like just testing different headlines or button copy.
Awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, A/B testing is really just a numbers game. And for like startup marketers, and as I mentioned before, small and medium business marketers that don't quite have that sample size, personalization and personalized post-click experiences can be a lot more effective, because to really come to true conclusions with A/B testing tools, you need an extremely large sample size, to tell if the difference between a red button or a blue button was more effective. So personalization is definitely more beneficial if you don't quite have that sample size.
Cool. So the next question comes from Jack, and he's asking, what are your personal favorite tools? You mentioned that some of the pre-click technologies are more sophisticated. Is there one that you found is better than others? Mike, why don't you give us an example of what you've used in the past and what you found helpful in the pre-click side?
Well, pre-click side, so going back the span of 7 years, I would say that Excel was my very earliest friend. Aggregating everything into one kind of pivot table or overall spreadsheet, and then doing some of my adjustments there. Later, as there's some great solutions now that you can sync a bunch of APIs together, so like segment.io and a few of those others are great from a reporting standpoint. I think what you're starting to see now in the ad tech space, there's other players as well, such as ourselves, that give you the ability to both kind of track everything from a performance standpoint, but actually make inline edits as well. So you've seen more of those consolidations of ad tech technology, and I think that's more of the cutting edge today.
Cool. And Nicholas, do you have any experience with using different pre-click technologies that you would recommend?
Yeah, I do. Like I mentioned in my story before, my pre-click experience was actually very, very similar to Michael's, where I would, use the platforms and the ad networks. Pretty standard for every marketer, like AdWords, Facebook, for B2B companies, LinkedIn. And at the end of the day, Excel was my best friend as well. So I'm actually a big advocate of the AdStage platform, because it saved me so much time from having to go and create campaigns in each individual one of those platforms. And then again, at the end of the week, go crunch those numbers. Like that 8 to 10 hours I save every week, I spend making content. We're doing more video production stuff, and it's been just super helpful. And another tool that I've used that's actually, I remember showing you guys the other day, was Zapier. And Zapier I used to kind of fill in the gaps and connect the dots with any of my platforms that maybe don't have direct integrations with each other. So the Facebook data I can take and push directly into my marketing automation system. And you can virtually connect any two applications together. So that's been extremely useful for me as well, mainly for attribution and then cycling that data back to get smarter in my pre-click strategies.
Nicholas, on the topic of attribution, I'm actually curious as to what is your system of truth for reporting? Do you report out of your marketing automation system or somewhere else?
Yeah, so all the reporting, or I'll start with all the endpoint for all our data is Salesforce. All of the data from our campaigns, our lead identity, interest, profile data, that all gets pushed through our marketing automation system to our CRM. And in terms of actually analyzing that, there's a few tools I use. One, for the pre-click world, I use AdStage because I can log right in, and in my dashboard right there, I have all my aggregate metrics across my channels, all the conversions, and I can see in real time how they're performing. And then in the post-click space, I use, or for the long-term revenue funnel, we use a tool called Clipfolio as well, which is super easy for taking an endpoint like Salesforce and then creating visuals and analyzing that data.
Great. Well, thanks, Nicholas. And then what about you, Mike? What kind of reporting system of truth have you found helpful or time-saving on your end?
Yeah, so I'll be very honest. As a scrappy startup for the very longest time, we were reporting out disparate systems. So we were doing transactions through Stripe and getting it through Barometrics or some of our visuals. We were tracking things through by Intercom as well. Just as recently, we've hooked our CRM Salesforce up to HubSpot. We're learning a lot more about our users than we ever have. And with that, we plan to do more personalized experiences, whether it's a Jebbit or some other tools to kind of look at. I'm really excited to actually take a look at Jebbit from a greater degree. I know it's done great things for bigger brands. Love to see what it can do for some of our advertisers. But at the end of the day, for me, Salesforce is kind of our endpoint for actual contracts being realized and revenue. And that all points back to our marketing automation system, which is HubSpot, which I as far as the lead lifecycle stages that I'm reporting out of.
Great. Okay, cool. I think that was the last question. But if you guys think of any more questions down the road, feel free to reach out. Nicholas is on Twitter. His handle is @NicholasLemx. And then as well, Michael is also on Twitter. His handle is @LonoHead. Again, we're going to be sending out the recording, so stay on the lookout for that in your email inboxes. But I just wanted to thank Nicholas and Michael once again for putting on a fabulous webinar. This was really insightful and helpful for especially new marketers who just are getting very overwhelmed with all the technologies that are available. All right, well, thanks everyone for joining today. We'll talk to you soon. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.